Okay, looks like we are streaming live. I just got to hook up a few more wires and plug in a few more plugins, and we'll have the show on the road. I'm setting up a little chat line here. What do you know? Technology, who knew, right? So here we go. Just checking over there in the cooking community. Make sure that folks can get over there and ask questions. And there it is. Let me fire that up. Oh, and this is going to be a good one. Yeah, there it is. There's a couple people watching. So very nice. So I am Dave Nelson. If you're wondering what's going on here, this is Bisque Ahoy. Okay. There is a little story behind this episode. Basically, what all of my episodes are I found something at the market or the store or whatever it is. I got a really good deal on something or something intrigued me this week. Okay. And so I just look into that ingredient or item, and I try and think of a cooking lesson that I can impart to you, the gentle viewer, okay? And so there's, like I said, there's a little story here, okay? I went over to the Tacoma market on Sunday. It's over in Ruston Point, and I picked up smoked crab and smoked oysters, but you can see those big old chunks there. And I also got some smoked oysters, you know, and I saw all this stuff over there, and I'm just immediately thinking, oh, chowder, right? And then I'm thinking, screw that, I like bisque even better, right? And so I thought, you know, I should do a lesson on bisque and how to really like extract that flavor out of crustaceans to make one of those lobster bisque, crayfish bisque, or a shrimp bisque, or just any other kind of bisque, right? How do you get the flavor out of those creatures and into the pot? That's what this class is going to be about, okay? There's going to be a lot of soup dynamics in here. You're going to see me, you know, I'm going to be talking about different ways to get here on this, you know, because that's another thing about the story behind this class. I struggled so much with how to bring this bisque to the front, right? Do I do a modern bisque where it might be thickened with maybe some arrowroot or something like that, right? A refined starch. Do I do like a flour thickened bisque, you know, that you might see, you know, that we used to teach in culinary school, or do I do a classic bisque with rice? That's the thing about bisque. The original or the classic bisque was thickened with rice back in the day. And so I decided, yeah, I'm going to go that way. Hey, people hate flour. I'm not going to do a flour thickened one. These days, everybody's like gluten free. I'm going to use rice, thus making this preparation gluten free, right? Let me kind of get into this, and we'll talk about what bisques are, but I really want to kind of get into cooking. So let's take a look at some of these ingredients, okay? If I was going to take this recipe on, I got everything laying out here, but I would go in a certain order here. I showed you that crab. Now, normally I'm not going to use crab in the soup unless I'm using it as a garnish at the end, right? I really want to show off like chunks of crab in this soup. But to start this soup, I'm really extracting flavor mostly out of shells, okay? I got some shrimp shells that I peeled off of some shrimp a while back. I threw them in my my freezer, and I held on to them. This is what we do in restaurants. In restaurants, there's a million little packages of these guys all over the place because every night we're you know, cleaning like 9-10 pounds of shrimp, you know, all night long. It's just what we do. There is so much shrimp to clean in the restaurant business. So we don't throw these shells away. We make bisque out of these, okay? So my first ingredients would be a little bit of shell. Now, I don't have a lot of shell, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get some of this shredded crab, and I'm gonna go ahead and throw it in there, okay? Normally in a restaurant, we would never do this, like premium product here going in to just make the base for a crab bisque or something like that. But I really don't have very many shells, and so I really want this to taste good. So I'm going to kind of sacrifice a little bit of my shredded up crab to get the initial flavor base going in the beginning of this. This is going to be so good. When we used to make this in culinary school, the students would just flip out. It is so delicious, okay? So I'm going to use a little bit of my crab meat, but mostly shells, and that's one of the cool things we're going to talk about. We're just really using shells, and it could be crab shells, it could be crawfish shells, lobster shells, or shrimp shells. Any crustacean is going to work for you, okay? And so here it is. By the way, you could smoke these shells and make a smoked chowder. I have smoked crab here that I'm going to be using. So anyway, let's keep going. I put these two together with a little butter, okay? That would be my third ingredient if I was doing these in order. I'm going to work in some aromatic ingredients like vegetables, okay? I've got a little fennel bulb here. I'm going to go ahead and work that in, and then the green I'm going to use as a garnish for later on, okay? And so you'll see me kind of use that. I'm going to work in some onion, some celery, typical, you know, soup ingredients here, right? Nothing strange, and also carrot, okay? And those three right there, that's your mirepoix, if you're familiar with the term, right? carrot, celery, and onion. So you're seeing your typical mirepoix. Other things I could use for a bisque, I could really see using other white vegetables, like a little bit of parsnip in here would give it a dynamite middle ground body to the soup, right? And also something like the white part of the leeks, right? Not the green, but the white part of the leeks would also be an appropriate onion type thing to work in here. Oh, and also, you know, the king of them all for this dish would probably be shallots. I would love to have some shallots here, but I'm just kind of mostly working with what I got around the house and what I kind of found at the market yesterday, right? Okay, I've got some herbs here. I've got a few bay leaves, and I've got a chunk of garlic. And this garlic, you know, a lot of recipes, you'll see someone, you know, sweating the garlic in. In this one, you're going to see me just crush this clove and throw it right in the pot and let it just kind of cook in there. Okay, it's going to be kind of a different garlicky flavor, a softer garlic, if you will, the softer side of garlic. Hey, Chef Neil, I see you out there. Nice to see you, brother. Hope you're doing well in Portland, man. So you're going to see me create a little bouquet garni over here, and I'm going to throw that on in there. The reason I want to do a bouquet, I don't really want to puree those ingredients into my soup. Okay, it's going to be just a mess, and you don't like the flavor of a pureed bay leaf in there. Believe me, you won't. Another item I'm gonna throw in there now. Bisque can go a lot of different ways here. Okay, some chefs will work in some tomato here, so it's kind of like a tomato-based soup, almost like a cream of tomato, almost, right? Other chefs will work a little paprika in here. Okay, now I have paprika here. It's a hot smoked paprika. I really didn't want to use this paprika in there because I've already got smoked crab that's just absolutely delicious, and I don't want to bring in this canned smoked paprika and have it overpower the flavor of this delicious Pacific Northwest crab, right? And so I'm going to leave this out, okay, for those purposes, but definitely paprika is another way that chefs will get kind of a reddish, pinkish color out of this. You're going to see me use a little bit of tomato product today, okay? That's usually what I go for. I don't like the paprika too much, but hey, to each his own, okay? Now, at this point, one more thing that I'm going to work into this. You've got a choice, okay? But there is going to be either a sherry or a brandy in here to really get that classic bisque flavor. You're going to want that background there, okay? The sherry, I think the British tend to lean more towards the sherry, where the French, of course, probably lean more towards the brandy. So it's kind of in between those two, whatever you use. I have a very, very dry sherry here. I don't want a super, super sweet one. I'm going to cook this sherry down in there, reduce it down. And when I do, those sugars, even though it's a dry sherry, it's still got sugars in there. And those sugars are going to concentrate, and it's still going to be a very, very sweet little addition to the pot, okay? And let's see, other things I have here. Now, at this point, with the sherry and the shells and the tomato product and all of that, I could just add water to this and create a crustacean essence, right? I saute it. You'll see me put this together, saute the shells out, get color into it, really sweat everything together, and then work the tomato paste in there, cook that a little bit. I'm using just like diced tomato, by the way. Tomato paste is really ideal, but I just had diced tomatoes, right? But you cook this down in there, and that's going to give you a little background color. I want to see a color change in that tomato. I don't want it just to be like red tomato. I want it to be like cooked tomato product in there. So you'll see a little color change to rust in there, okay? All of that's going in there, and all of this would be a crustacean stock at this point. But we're going to take it all the way into Bisque town, okay? And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add some liquid to this, maybe about a quart of liquid. Now, this liquid could be a stock, it could be like a fish stock or something like that. It could be clam juice or something, right? You buy that clam juice, it's so refreshing in the summertime to just chug, right? I don't know who drinks clam juice, but you could also use a vegetable stock, whatever flavorful liquid you have around, but quite honestly, water, it works. And when I'm doing my demonstrations, oftentimes I want to see students how much flavor you can get out of just using water. So quite frankly, today, I'm just going to use water as my base liquid here and get my flavor out of my ingredients here. And then to thicken all, I'm going to do the traditional bisque trail today. I'm going to thicken it with a little bit of rice. Now, normally I would just throw in the rice along with the liquid. I would let that cook off until that rice gets really, really soft. And then I just puree the whole thing. And by the way, there are shells in here we're talking about, right? So yes, we're talking about pureeing the shells. And then we're going to pass it all through a sieve. And then we've got our bisque, right? The rice is going to be thickening it. And it's going to be a beautiful thing, okay? Now, you're not going to see me work with exacting, amounts here or anything. I'll toss some ingredients out here, but you're just going to see me cooking like I normally do. This isn't a recipe, okay? I'm just cooking you through bisque knowledge, basically, and what I would kind of lay down in a culinary lecture at school. Okay, and so please join me for this journey. I'm going to take another sip of lube so you guys kind of see the setup. Okay, so right now I've got my first three ingredients here. I've got some butter. I've got some shrimp shells, which are the kind of the star of the show. It's so cool. We're making bisque out of like shells, out of like kitchen scraps. It's really, really great. And by the way, one thing about this, I'm charging extra for shrimp bisque. I don't just, you know, put it out there for soup of the day. I put it out there for an extra $2 a bowl or whatever, right? And so this is a premium here. So shells, I also got a little bit of crab that I'm going to work in just to get more punch out of this, because normally I would have more shells, to be quite honest. I'd have like triple that, okay? Anytime you are working with shells at home, you want to hang on to those shells. Now, to get into the fire, onto the fire, I don't really need to do anything with these. I'm just going to go ahead and kick things on. And I don't really want to scorch anything in the pan. I'm using whole butter here, and whole butter will burn on you. So I just want to get this butter melted. I'm going to throw about 3 cubes in there, maybe 4. Very important, you know, the right fat for the preparation you're doing, you know. When I'm doing Asian food, I got sesame oil in there. If I'm cooking Mexican food, hey, I'm probably using like some pork fat or lard in there to be quite honest, you know, a lot of the time. Hey, when I'm doing French cuisine, I'm working butter in there, right? If you aren't using the right fat for the cuisine you're working, it just doesn't taste right, okay? So I'm getting my butter melted. And I'm going to throw in my shells. And heaven help me, I'm also going to throw in my shredded up crab. I would normally not be doing this. And again, in the restaurant, we're just saving up shells over time as we're cleaning shrimp, as we're cleaning crabs, as we're cleaning lobsters. All of that stuff works. I can work it all into a crustacean stock. And that crustacean stock is the bomb in things like a paella, if you want to do it that way, but gumbo, okay? Hey, chicken gumbo's fine, right? But when I have a gumbo made out of shellfish broth, crustacean broth, oh my gosh, it's just unbelievable, okay? Now, all of my first 3 ingredients are in there. As I'm going here, I'm going to do what I call feed the kitty. I'm going to be cutting up vegetables while this stuff's working, right? And I also want to work in my spices. I think I'll get my herbs and bay leaves together right now. I'm going to make a quick little bouquet garni out of 2 bay leaves, and I want to count them, and I want to make sure I get those 2 bay leaves out of there because we're pureeing this later. I also have a good little chunk of thyme on the board, and I got a piece of string. Nothing fancy here, people. I'm just going to wrap the string around it. Boy, these bay leaves are really breaking up. I think I lost half of one, but that's all right. I was thinking 2 might be too much. Very dry. Okay. Tie it. Some people wrap a leek around it. I don't know how a leek. But there it is. Nothing fancy, okay? It's tied around those spines through the leaves, and they're going to kind of stick around. And I like to work, you know, if I'm working spices into a dish, anything like that, I like to work it in during kind of the sweating phase here. And as this sweats, you're going to see me use the tool of choice here. You're going to see me using a bamboo spatula here, okay? A wooden spoon, anything like that. I use a little bamboo paddle because I can get torque on it. I got a bamboo paddle for cooking, and I got a bamboo paddle for rice. Okay, so I've got a little bit of heat going in there, and so I'm going to turn it down. I don't want the fire to get away from me because I've got other work to do here. So I've turned it down to probably about 7 out of 10, okay? And it's just gonna be chilling on the side while I'm working on the next item, which is going to be a garlic clove, okay? I'm gonna crunch a garlic clove and throw that in there. You've probably seen this a million times on Food Network with your favorite Food Network star. This one is a monster. Look at the size of him. Wow, that's garlic clove cocktail. It's huge. And I'm just going to crush it and throw it on in there just to build flavor at the beginning of the meal. This is where we're developing those initial flavors. I don't want little pieces of garlic that are going to burn in there and take over. I just want smooth and soft for my garlic. Okay, I'm going to start working some aromatic veggies in here. So you're going to start seeing me knock out my things like onion, celery, and a little bit of fennel. I'm going to work in a carrot as well. And I don't think it really matters how quickly or which one I put in first, which order I put in first here. So I'm just going to go with the celery. And my pot is just cooking. Now, you know, I'm thinking here, this is all going to get pureed. So I don't really need this stuff pretty. I just want it fast. So you're going to see me just kind of zip through these veggies. There's my celery. And what do you think that is? 2 ounces or so? Not very much. I'm not measuring here. I'm just cooking, and we're talking about bisque, okay? I got shells in a pan with butter. That's step 1 of bisque. I've got a bouquet garni rolling in there, thyme and bay leaf. Now I'm going to throw in about 1/2 of an onion. I think I'll hold off on that other half. And we're just dicing these up super quick. Again, doesn't need to be pretty. I just want to do it fast. You're going to see me knock through these. Now, if you guys want to see some knife cuts, I got a bunch of old cooking archive videos over on YouTube. I hate to, you know, sound like that guy. I'm cutting up veggies really, really small here, by the way, so they can cook up quickly, okay? I've got onion in there. I've got celery in there. You see that bouquet swimming around in there. And the shells are getting even brighter, okay? These were off of some cooked shrimp, but I'm getting some shells getting even brighter there. And that's what I'm looking for. I want them to be bright red. Next thing I want to do is a little bit of fennel in there. And I've also got a little carrot I'm going to roll into it as well. Oh, yes. So with the fennel, this comes apart just like celery. So I take off the bottom, and I'll just keep that for a stock or something like that. And then these pieces just kind of peel off like pieces of celery do, okay? I've got all of this really beautiful green here, and that's going to be part of my garnish. I'm going to go ahead and remove that right now. And I'm going to put it into one of Nate Simon's deli cups and set it off to the side in the fridge. And I'm going to go ahead and just get a small amount of fennel in there as well, okay? The fennel has very, very long strings in it, basically fibers. That's the word I want to use. And so I'm going to cut along those fibers. And again, doesn't have to be pretty here. This is all going to get pureed. But I do want to kind of cut across those fibers so I don't have big old long fibers of fennel in my blender later on, wrapping around my gears, right? And so I make sure that I cut across those fennel fibers so they break down. And they're very, very small, and they're going to cook up very, very quickly. You're seeing me roll on the knife work in this one because I've done other knife classes. All right. A little bit of carrot. Let me grab a peeler for this. I tend not to use the carrot peel. If you've ever tasted a piece of carrot peel, it is really, really bitter. You don't want that, okay? And so I always remove the carrot peel when I'm cooking. Let me give my pot a little stir, by the way. You can see the fennel sitting on top. I'm getting a little color there. And I didn't really want to develop too much color in here yet. And so anytime I see color in a pot and I don't want color going on, I add a little liquid. That's when I deglaze. You guys know the term, right? If you're unfamiliar, right? We're adding a little liquid in there. It's going to melt any of those little caramelized bits on the bottom, and it's going to add to the flavor and character and richness to the pot, right? And so what do I want to deglaze in this? Well, I'm going to be using some sherry in this dish, so why don't I just go ahead and get that started whenever I need to break down a little of those brown bits on the bottom. So you're going to see me just kind of deglaze from time to time, kind of using my liquid as a tool is really what I'm doing to keep the bottom of my pot nice and clean. Here we go. Right? Any browning, just kind of melt it away because I don't want my bisque to be brown. I want it to be red. And also orange, okay? Carrot is going to give me a little color. I will warn you not to use too much carrot because it gets really, really sweet. It'll almost taste like a dessert soup if you use too much carrot. I'm just going to use a little bit of carrot here, probably about 1.5 ounces. And you can see me go ahead and peel them. You know, the peelers go both ways. And yeah, I'm just going to lop a little piece off that I can use, and I'm going to get rid of that peel. It's not very appealing. And there it goes. It's gone. And we shall never speak of it again. That's one thing I don't use. And let me just say, if I do have like a baby carrot or something like that, you know, this beautiful little carrot, those guys I'll just scrub really well. I don't peel those guys, but these industrial carrots, you know, from Amway or wherever we get our carrots, you know, at the regular grocery store around here. Hey, those guys, I'm going to peel those guys. That peel's pretty bitter. Okay, so let me just cut this up really, really quick. Doesn't need to be pretty. I just want it fast, okay? I could, well, I'll go one long ways and then just straight across. Zip, 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 zip. Little nubby bits, little tiny bits, okay? The smaller the pieces, the faster it's gonna cook down and we can puree. I'm going back into my pot and giving it a stir, and I can smell the crab and the shrimp shells and everything. I've got a little bit more browning going in the corner over there. Oh no, what do you think we ought to do? I know what I'm gonna do about that. A little deglaze time just takes care of that. Nice. Okay, you're watching Industry Cooking in the Industry Cooking community. We do this every Monday, by the way. Just cooking my way through dinner is what I'm doing, quite honestly, guys. That's what you're seeing here. Right now, we're making a bisque, okay? So my veggies, aromatics are in there. What I want to do is also work in a little more color, and what we usually use for that is some tomato product, right? I was kind of talking about that earlier. So I'm going to take a little bit of tomato product. Now, what do I mean by product? I've got diced tomatoes here. All I had was canned diced tomatoes, to be honest. Okay, that's what I got. But typically you'll see chefs using like tomato paste. How do you make tomato paste out of diced tomatoes? You cook the water out of it and you got tomato paste. So that's what I got there. I am going to just start cooking it on down. And this is where I want to kind of turn up the heat slightly. And I'm going to stay on this baby and just try and cook some of the moisture out of this and try and get a little color on it. Maybe develop a tiny bit of color at this point. So I just turned it up a little bit. I can kind of concentrate on things a little more. Really now most of the items are in there at this point, except for liquid, my rice. That's what I'm going to kind of thicken to make it into a soup, right? I've got a little bit of, you know, usually we will finish this with cream. A little disclosure here, one of my last ingredients I didn't mention before, I've got yogurt in here. I use yogurt around the house in place of cream oftentimes. I don't really like sour cream. Hey, yogurt, you know, things, it just works, okay? I'm going to be tempering this into the soup at the end as a finish, okay? So you'll see a little more culinary wisdom going in there, okay? And it's going to give it a little tanginess, okay? But it will also kind of substitute for that creaminess as well. So you're going to see me use yogurt in this instead of cream today, but dairy finishes tend to work in a similar fashion. So keep an eye out for that later on. Oh, yeah. So far, we've talked about a couple of garnishes that are going to be going in here. We talked about the crab and I've got smoked crab and smoked oysters, okay? So we talked about that. We've got the yogurt that's going in at the end, the yogurt finish. We've got the fennel fronds, all of those little green herbs coming out of that fennel bulb that are all going to be finishes for this soup. Okay, not traditional finishes, okay, but you know, these bisques tend to be a creamy, just like a straight cream soup is what you typically see. This is, now that I got all this stuff in the pot, we're kind of cooking things. Now's a good time to kind of talk about this stuff, okay? So let's go back to the beginning of like, what is a bisque? You often see bisque on the menu, but sometimes you'll see cream of lobster or cream of shrimp too, right? It's like, what's the deal with that? Is there a difference there? Well, I kind of mentioned a difference in the beginning. A cream soup, it tends to be based on like a roux or something like that, a flour type soup or something like that, a flour-based soup. When we're doing those cream soups, we tend to just kind of thicken a velouté, which is, you know, we tend to thicken a stock, a flavorful stock. And then once we thicken it, we can kind of puree it up and serve it, okay? I can use this velouté technique for crab shells, shrimp shells, things like that, just like this, or I could use it for asparagus or broccoli or carrots or any other thing. Cream soups all kind of work like that. These are like soup dynamics 101, right? Making a cream soup. I'm starting to get a little more color on my shells here, okay? It's looking good. The tomatoes kind of getting the moisture cooked out of it yet. It's not really changing color yet. Okay, so we were just talking about like a cream of lobster soup, right? It would be more like a flavorful liquid, a lobster flavored liquid or a shrimp flavored liquid thickened with a flour roux, okay? And then finished with a cream. What we're looking at here is going to be a little bit different, a traditional bisque, okay? We are going to make a traditional bisque by thickening this with a little bit of rice. So what I did in this case, at this point, I could add liquid, I could add rice and kind of let it simmer together, and then I could puree it up. But just to save time in class, I cooked off my rice ahead of time. You'll see me use that as a thickening agent, and I'm going to be pureeing that into the soup, okay? So what we're talking about now is a puree soup, which is a different dynamic altogether. Puree soups aren't the same as a cream soup. Puree soups use ingredients that will thicken the soup, okay? And so in some cases, we use rice, right? In other cases, we might use a potato or something like that, right? Think of Bisque, right? It's a cold potato leek soup. That's a puree soup. We thicken the potatoes in that soup. That is the agent that is going to thicken it, right? I'm going to give it another little deglaze here, okay? So I built up a little bit of caramel in here from like tomato and the shrimp shells and all of that, the sugars in the pot, the vegetables. So what I'm going to do is deglaze that a little bit. Find a good spot for you before it gets too dark. Okay. Now, if I was using brandy here, I mentioned a little while ago, we can use brandy for this. Brandy will flame up. So I'm going to kind of add brandy off of the fire. But this sherry is not super high alcohol. It's not going to jump out of the pot. With flames aren't going to jump out of the pot. So I can just kind of pour it in. And that alcohol will just kind of evaporate away. Sometimes a little lick of fire will catch. Okay. So we're going back to basically that definition of bisque. If you are talking about a flour thickened bisque, you're probably talking more about a cream of lobster, cream of shrimp. If you're doing a puree style bisque with rice, traditionally, that's when you're talking about a traditional bisque. Now, the reality out there is nobody's doing a rice thickened soup. To be honest, it's kind of hard to babysit on a restaurant line. You know, you thicken this stuff with rice, it's temperamental. It wants more water later on, so it sits there for 10 minutes and it thickens up, and you're, oh my gosh, I got to thin this out again. So you adjust it with some stock, you know, check the seasonings again, and it's like 10 minutes later, it's thickened again. You know, this rice just never gives up. You know, it's hard to hit that equilibrium. So I'm going to go really, really light on this rice in here. I can always add more, but I can't pull it out, right? So once this all comes together, you'll see it get to the point where we can puree pretty darn quickly, okay? So I'm building up some more color in here. I'm getting more color on the tomato, a little color on the bottom. And this is where we build the flavor for that crustacean broth, okay? And again, oftentimes you're just making a broth out of this. I think I'll give it another shot of sherry. Boom. I'm getting into the pot here and just scraping it with that wooden spoon, my bamboo spatula. And see all the little crusties on there? That's what we're trying to develop. I just kicked the heat up to about 8 out of 10. It's pretty high. The pot's still slightly wet. I want to cook that out. Oh, cool. So Debbie's out there and she says she's been saving those shells in the freezer. I am so glad. You should make a ton of stock. You could probably sell it, because how many people actually go through all this work? That's the thing about a bisque in a restaurant. We save those shells, we stack them up, and we can make money out of those, and not a heck of a lot else. You saw what I put in here, just a couple of little vegetables, a little mirepoix, a little bouquet garni, right? There's hardly anything going on here. It's all coming from the shrimp shells. And like I said, shrimp bisque, lobster bisque, those things are a premium soup, right? We actually do in many restaurants, upcharge for that soup more than the soup of the day, right? Maybe $6 extra in a hotel or something, right? So, hey, it's all because we're putting the work in there. We know how to do it, and hardly anyone does it. So that's great if you got some shrimp shells. Oh, could you use Old Bay seasoning in a seafood bisque? Yeah, you sure could. You do want to be a little bit careful with that Old Bay. It's pretty salty, I'm sure you know if you ever use that stuff, right? But yeah, you can have a little Old Bay in the background there. And by the way, bisque is French, but there's also a Louisiana bisque, right? And so that's kind of, I'm sure you're going to see most people's recipes with a little pinch of that Old Bay or some other, you know, Creole blend going on in there. That's not Cajun cooking. That's Creole cooking. That's city cooking. Those Creole bisques. I got a little color in the pan. I'm going to kind of deglaze that again. You see, I'm just kind of really, whoops, I'm really trying to work my sherry into this little by little is what I'm doing. And I get in there and I clean up the pot. I don't let it get too dark. And I'm developing color. I'm cooking those vegetables down softer and softer so they'll be able to puree. And yes, the shrimp shells are going to get pureed as well. There's a little bit of color in a corner over here. I'm going to do another deglaze. And yes, I am using a lot of sherry. Hey, Miss Gina, good to see you, young lady. Been seeing you around on the social medias. Oh, yeah. We were just talking about a Louisiana bisque. You're Southern, I believe. Oh, yeah. Okay, so it's still cruising along. This is probably going to make the Gina roll in her grave, you know. Now, I was going to talk about bisque, the pepper I use, right? And these things, I'm not really using a black pepper in a bisque. Usually you see that in a lot of French style cooking and everything, but we're usually using like a cayenne pepper with a lot of your seafood dishes. Whoa, whoa. And so cayenne pepper, I thought, great, but then I scored some Aleppo chilies at the store the other day, and I thought that might be a little freaky in there. It's got a little bit more depth to it. It's a little more body to this pepper. It does have a little bit of saltiness to it, so I'm going to hang back, but that's going to be my pepper of choice today. I'm using an Aleppo pepper. I have a little spice shop in my new town in Gig Harbor, Washington, and so this is from the For the Love of Spice little shop in Gig Harbor. You can check it out online. They sell spices online, kind of like our shop back home. So I'm going to go with a little bit of our Aleppo pepper to kind of kick the spice into this. Now, I don't want to make like, you know, we're talking Creole cooking. This isn't Cajun or anything like that. I don't want this thing to burn my mouth. I want some background spice here that's going to open up my palate enough to really be able to taste this more, right? It's kind of like how salt lets you taste food more. You get a little bit of chili spice on your tongue. All of a sudden, you're tasting those essences behind the food you're eating. So I'm just throwing in a little pinch or a bump, whatever you want to call that. I got a little Aleppo pepper in there, okay? Just trying it out, but I like it, and I thought it would really work in here. And now you can see I've got some darkness on the bottom, darkness on the edge of town right there, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and hit it with a little bit more sherry. Oh my gosh, I'm doing a little split bottle here, right? Just a little guy, and I've almost used the whole thing. But hey, that's how I roll. We're building more and more flavor into this, right? It's not like I'm using real shrimp to make this. I'm using shells. And so, but you can really see how much color is developing now. My tomatoes are definitely a darker shade, and we've got more orange happening in the pot, okay? It takes a little time to do this, and that's why we upsell this stuff. We upcharge, I should say, right? It's beautiful. I should say it's not beautiful. It's kind of ugly right now, but as I always said in school, the ugliest pot wins when you're doing this kind of stuff. You want to develop scungy color, nasty looking pot bottom in there, and the ugliest one wins. If you just got a wimpy little pale thing going on in there that's all wet and steamy, you're just not doing it right, okay? So this is it. At this point, I'm getting real close to wanting to be adding some liquid to this thing just to make a broth, or if I want to take it into Bisque Town, like we're going to do in here, we're going to add broth and we're going to add some rice and let that cook together, okay? Right on, New Orleans all day. Is etouffee the same as Bisque? Etouffee is very different. Etouffee is it's a flour thickened preparation, so different from a bisque, right? And etouffee is one of the things where they use a special roux for it, a black roux. It gets really, really dark when you're cooking this roux. It looks like tar, but that is what gives that etouffee the distinctive flavor that it has, right? Ms. Gina, shout out if you got anything to add to that. Yeah, etouffee, a whole other different animal. I should get a Creole professor in here to talk about a good etouffee, really, because that is probably not my forte, the etouffee. Let me get a little bit of liquid in here. I'm going to be using, of course, let's talk about that deli cup, because Nate brought up deli cups this week in the group, right? The deli cup, if the full-size deli cup, if I go up to the first line there, that's a 1 quart measure. So I'm going to throw in 1 quart of liquid right now. I use deli cups for everything. Okay, so, whoa, 1 quart measure. Get it in the frame here. 1 quart measure going in the pot. And there it is. There it is. I'm going to give it a little stir around. Oh my gosh, you're looking at me. You want to look at the pot. And you can see the liquid. Hey, it's kind of reddish. That's what we're looking for, okay? And there are little crusty bits in the bottom that I'm kind of stirring around. I'm going to kick up the heat a little bit more. Let's get it up to the boil. And then we're going to take it down to the simmer, okay? And you hear me say that on almost everything I cook. Get it up to the boil, bring it down to the simmer. Oh, yeah. Gonna be good. Gonna be good. So I haven't added any salt to this yet. The crab that we're going to be working in is a little bit salty. You might see me add a tiny bit in, but I'm going to really hold off on that salt, okay? Next thing I want to work in, now that I've got the liquid in there, by the way, again, I want to say it, this is basically shrimp stock. It's this stage. I would simmer this for about 40 minutes to an hour, okay? No more than that. It starts getting a little funky tasting, kind of gets a little greasy tang to it. And so I kind of pull it off after that and strain it out, and you've got the essence of crustacean, right? And that's kind of one of those things that most home cooks, they have no clue on how to build what we just built right there, okay? It's just like not in their lexicon, okay? So it's always kind of fun, you know, and a lot of people do know about that idea of saving the shrimp shells. And they get to that point of like, gosh, what do I do with all these shrimp shells now? This is kind of what restaurants do with it. And I think you'll find if you like a bisque, you know, hey, this is a worthwhile pursuit for you to follow, okay? So let me go ahead and work in, let's turn it into a bisque by adding a little bit of rice, okay? So what I got here is I just pre-cooked about 4 ounces of long grain rice, okay? I have long grain white rice, and I'm gonna go ahead and put it in there. I could actually just throw in the raw rice, but again, I did this to save time during the show. So here we go with about half of that rice. And I'm kind of breaking it up in there. And we want that rice to kind of boil along with it, so it kind of becomes one with the soup. Okay, so I just threw in about half of that rice. And that means if this soup isn't thick enough later, I can always add more, just in case. And now that rice is wet, it just falls right apart in there. Now, one thing about this, when you are thickening with something starchy, it'll settle down to the bottom. It's got that tendency to sink down there. So keep it moving, get your spoon engaged there, and just don't let 2 minutes go by without stirring that thing, okay? Just get in there. We're trying to get up to the boil here, and then we're gonna bring it down to the simmer. Everything is in there that really needs to be in there outside of garnish and seasoning. So we're just going to kind of keep an eye on that. And while we do, we're going to work up our garnishes on this board. So I've got the fennel fronds. That's the last thing I want to cut up because it's going to get garbage all over my board. Okay. And so I'm going to set that aside. I've got yogurt here. That's going to be a finish. I'm going to stir it in. I'm going to use it as I would cream in a regular bisque. Give this a little stir while I talk. So that's a garnish. And then I also have some smoked oysters and smoked crab pieces. And I have to say, I still remember an old chef of mine that would always make a big deal about showing off the money, okay? We make a bisque out of shrimp shells, and there's not really much to it. We made it out of kitchen scraps, right? So if we're gonna charge it, you know, $8 12 bucks for a bowl or whatever in a hotel, make sure that we show off a little money, right? So show off like a couple of big chunks of shrimp in there, a couple of big old pieces of the crab, right? And it's even better if you have what I got from the Brady Shellfish Company in Tacoma, okay? This smoked crab and smoked oysters, right? So I'm gonna cut these in big, impressive chunks to just kind of lay into my my bisque at the end, okay? I don't want this stuff to fall apart. It's not going in early. It's gonna kind of hang out at the side. So you're gonna see me chunk these up a little bit, maybe just kind of cut things in half about. And I've got nice chunky garnishes to lay into the soup. And by the way, when I say garnish, that just means any chunky stuff I want to put in there. That's all considered garnish in a kitchen, okay? My soup has hit the boil, by the way. It's really boiling, so I'm going to take it down to the simmer. I'm going to get the rice off the bottom, make sure nothing scorches, right? I don't trust it. I don't trust it. But now we're really just cooking the daylights out of everything in there. So it's super soft and it'll puree. And because I did that cooked rice, guys, it's really, I could puree this right now if I wanted to. But let me work through these garnishes really quick. Okay, we're getting there. Let me turn that down. I turned it down just slightly more. I'm riding on about 3 out of 10 right now. And I'm just gonna kind of knock my shellfish out and just leave it back in the bowl. And I'll cut them at a little angle. Oh, they got the little cartilage in that one. Cut them at an angle. Beautiful stuff. And I'm so tempted right now to have another taste. Well, that one crushed, so I'm gonna eat it. This stuff is so good, this fresh smoked crab. It is insane. Every little bite is precious. So good. I got to get more of this. I could eat this every day. Get the crab. Okay, all the big crab chunks are done. Those are nice little bite-sized pieces that are going to just blow your friends' minds if you gave them something like this. And then the oysters, I'm going to kind of break up, okay? I've got little pieces. I just want to kind of put them in naturally. I don't want to put a slice through them. And by the way, these oysters, oftentimes your smoked oysters are very salty. These are not. There's no added like salt to these guys. There's just a little shred there. Oh my gosh. So that's done. You can see my pot, what it looks like. It's just kind of cruising along. It's pretty good speed. Give that a little stir. Nothing's sticking. Nothing's even thinking about sticking. Are you kidding me? It's perfect. Oh, how was the crab smoked? Now, I did not talk to them about that. I didn't get a chance to talk to anyone from the company. It was kind of busy and I just had to get it and go. But I don't think it was brined either. It's just got that natural saltiness that crab has. It's not like any saltier than that. I think they just kind of laid it into their smoker and let it rip. Cold smoking is what you want to use though. There's a difference between hot smoking and cold smoking. You think of some smoked salmon that crumbles up when you eat it or try and cut it, it just falls apart because it's cooked through and through. That's hot smoked salmon where it's literally cooking it. But then you have that cold smoked salmon that's soft and pliable and you can kind of lay it, make like rosettes out of it if you want to on a canapé or something. That's cold smoked salmon where it doesn't really cook the proteins. It's really more about the curing process and adding flavor to it. So cold smoking is definitely what they did with these. Okay. I have one more thing, not traditional for a bisque, but I have some new potatoes that I cooked up. And so I'm just going to put some slices in the bowl along with it, just to have a little potato in there. It's going to be kind of a cross between a chowder and a bisque, if I may. Okay. So that'll be good. Oh yeah, Debbie Cunningham, you're going to try and smoke crab. Hey, another thing you can try, Debbie, is smoking your shrimp shells that you saved up and using those to make a bisque. You want to be really careful though. You don't want to smoke it so much that it turns into, it tastes like an electrical fire in your mouth, right? Just kind of subtle, get a little smoky flavor on there and you're good to go. We used to smoke shrimp shells, put them into cream, infuse that into cream, and then make mashed potatoes out of the smoked shrimp cream, right? And so we have these smoked shrimp mashed potatoes with little bits of smoked shrimp in them. Oh, they were just one of the best things I've ever tasted. Oh yeah. Hey, Carlos. Carlos talking about skating. We should get more skate talk in these little shows here. That is awesome. Good to see you, brother. Good to see you. If you're ever up near Seattle, man, give me a holler and we'll do it. I've only been out once since I got up here. So I'm just gonna kind of cut some potatoes up to use for garnish. I don't need many of these. They're just gonna go in a bowl. Whoa, lost one. Set those aside, and I got to chop an herb, and then we are going to finish this soup, and we're going to be in business. Nice, nice. Okay, just a little cleanup here. I wasn't cutting crab or anything, just a couple of potatoes. I think we're still looking good. I'm going to go ahead and get some fennel fronds here. And I think what I'm going to really do is just kind of pick some. I'm not going to chop it up. I want to pull little pieces. So let me just do it really quickly. I like rough. And there it is, almost there. Just little fronds, if you will. And I like the little tightly packed bunches in the center of the fennel. If you've ever played with this, you have the long lacy pieces outside, and then you have the really tight little ones on the inside. I like these little mini fronds in here. I think we're about there. I don't want a ton of this stuff. I use too much of this fennel and it starts tasting like cioppino or something. Nice. So yeah, just got a few little fronds there and we're in business. Zip, zip. On my last bowl. Boom. And you can really see them in there. You see how they're not too big, you know, nothing's too huge. Something you can eat. Oh, that guy's too huge. Let me break him up. Something that'll fit on a spoon, right? That's what I'm looking for. Very natural. I like food to look like it just happened. I don't like fancy cuts. I don't like faces on my plates, you know, moons over my hammy face, any of that. I like simple, beautiful food. Let the fronds speak for themselves. That's what I'm saying. Go fronds. Go fronds. Okay, so yeah, I've got a few garnishes here. Big old chunks of seafood. I got some potatoes. I got some beautiful little fennel fronds. I got yogurt to finish with. I've got my pot over here, and it's been just stewing along, and flavors have been blending, and flavors have been extracted from the shells, and they're in the liquid, and we're going to extract them even further by pureeing those. Yes, we're going to puree those shells in my blender. So that's the next step. We've got a piping hot liquid here, and we are going to work it into my piping hot blender, okay? I'm going to turn off my heat, and the first thing I want to do before I do anything here is remove, yes, I said remove that bouquet garni. So here it goes, okay? You can probably see it right there in the pot, middle of the pot. I'm just going to grab it. And one of the things I love is, you know, you see all those extra thyme leaves just kind of floating around. I'm okay if those get carried away. I just don't want those big old stems in there. Hey, Mr. Kirk, hey, good to see you, sir. And let me see if you can see my blender from over here. Yeah, I think you can, right? Yeah, I think we can. So we'll do it over here. I've got my blender cup, okay? And I don't have a lid for this. I just got a plastic lid that fits on top, and you're gonna want that. I got a blender bottom, and I have a bar blender, by the way. It just has an on-off switch, nothing fancy. You know, if you've got those buttons, you got to kind of play with them. But you're going to see me work this blender a little bit where it's just on, off, on. If you ever watch a bartender, that's how they do it too, right? You got to get the ingredients spinning and a little bit before you really crank it on, right? Otherwise, it will just explode out the top, especially a hot liquid. So that's what we're going to practice with this puree thing, is the on, off, on, as we puree this in the blender, okay? So there's my liquid. I am gonna grab it's about a 4-ounce ladle. And I'm gonna fill this about 1/3 of the way, okay? This is hot liquid. I don't even wanna play with trying to overfill this. I get used to this kitchen here. Now, I might have too much rice here, so I'm gonna be ready to thin this a little bit, but I should be okay. Okay, so that's a little over a third of the way, or no, that's about perfect actually. Whoops, I dropped my ladle though. And I'm gonna set it onto the blender. And before I blend this, I'm gonna bring in another element. This is what I'm gonna strain into, okay? So I've got a pot. I wanna put this back on the fire, so I'm straining into a pot. And I've got actually 2 sieves here. I'm doing shrimp shells and things like that. So I got a big sieve, and then I've got a little sieve underneath it, okay? This is called a chinois. This is called a china cap, okay? See the big holes? That's going in because that is rigid, and I can kind of, you know, push on that. Whereas this one is fine, and I could actually put holes in this one, okay? So the rigid one is protecting the fine one, but I need to go through this fine one. Okay, so that feels like it's in the way. So I'm gonna scoot it over here, and now we got a little flow going here. From here to here to here. Flow is important in a kitchen. Let me adjust that camera. So from here to the blender, and then the strainer's on the other side. And that's what you're gonna see me do here. Now, I've got a lid on the top here. I'm gonna hold that on, and you're gonna see me turn this blender on, off, and on again to get it spooled up so it doesn't fly out the top. And here it goes. Now you can see the ingredients are just whirring around in there. If you have too much rice, they're just gonna turn into mud right now, okay? So they're flowing around beautifully. I got a nice consistency. I'd really rather be on the little bit on the light side than the thick side here. Okay, that pureed up beautifully. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go ahead and start straining the first batch, and we're gonna puree the next batch. It's an excellent consistency. I'm really happy with how much rice I have in there so far. Rice is tricky. The kitchen smells great. Smells like a seafood restaurant in here. Oh yeah. I gotta get this thing to tilt on its own. It's potentially messy to do this over the stove, but I'm kind of tied here because of the camera thing. All right, the last one I'm going to do at the sink. Okay, we're going to do the same thing, on, off, on. So you saw just a little bit squirted out the top. It was just a little more full than I did on that first one. It's almost halfway, in fact. So as I was pureeing, I was working the other soup through those sieves over here. I'm going to do the same thing again. I've got a small ladle inside the cones here. And to strain, I just kind of work my ladle in kind of a circular motion in there. I don't think you guys can see that at all. I work the ladle kind of in a circular motion like so, and the liquid will just go right through. I've got the chunks in the upper one, and it seems like a lot of liquid is still stuck in the other one, so we'll work that out. Let me get the rest pureed. I'm going to do this at the sink real quick. I don't want to do the last part over my stove. I'll be back. There it is, just a little bit left. We'll get it all pureed, and then we're going to work it through these sieves. Here we go again, on, off, on. Okay, so we just pureed up all those shrimp shells and all those veggies and rice and all that other good stuff for our bisque. I'm going to get it all into one container. And I think I'll bring it all over a little closer to you guys. Let me do a quick little scene change. We're very close, guys. We're very close. Okay, so I think you can see in there, I've got 2 sieves. And what I'm going to do is sieve the top one here. And I'm using that, again, a circular motion. I don't know, you can't really see there. Let me move this up. A circular motion with that ladle. I'm not trying to really push stuff through actively. I'm trying to catch shells here. And they're going into a fine sieve or chinois underneath. I just splattered. It's the camera angles. And I don't really want to do too much more here, okay? Now, they do actually go for it. I guess I could. Let me go for all of it, because we're going through a fine sieve too. They actually make a tool that'll pound the last little bit of flavor out of shrimp shells and things. By the way, in the hotels and restaurants, we would use big old mixers to break up the shells before they went into a bisque. And I'm talking like crab shells or lobster shells that are really hard. We would just run them in a great big mixer with a paddle attachment, and the paddle would break up lobster bodies and things. So smaller pieces cook more efficiently as we're making the lobster or crustacean broth. And we're going to go ahead and work the rest of this bisque through. And again, I put it in a pot, and you can see when you do the ladle, it just flows right through. That's beautiful. I am so pleased with this consistency. Sometimes I get lucky. Sometimes I get lucky. There's not a grain of salt in here. I have not added any salt. I'm not trying to cram salt, shell pieces through my chinois here. And by the way, you saw me using 2 pieces there. You saw me using 2 strainers. I don't want to destroy this fine strainer that I have, this chinois. Okay, it's coming out. Gosh, I wish you were here live looking at the color of this. It's just beautiful. I'm not going to really push any more through there because I'm going to get shells and things in there. I want to kind of ease up on that. So let me just grab, if I may, let me grab a spoon. I'm going to get a little heat on this. We're going to start seasoning. And I want to show you the consistency of this. Let me get a little salt in here first. It needs a ton of salt. I'm also going to add a little more of that Aleppo chili. Oh, yeah. Hey, New Orleans was an international port. They probably had some of this around. Just another little bump of that. 1/4 teaspoon maybe. And as I stir this, look at the consistency if you can. I'm trying to get it as close as I can without melting my camera. Let me kind of scoot things. But you can never see the consistency of something until you stir it. And it's just perfect. I just love that consistency. Again, sometimes I just get lucky. So let me get this all the way up to the boil. We're getting ready to finish here. This soup's almost done. Oh yeah. I'm going to work a little more salt. I just tasted. We're going to get that in there. And again, we're getting it up to temperature. Huh. Yeah, Debbie's saying I seem to get lucky a lot. I do actually. I don't understand why that is. I never did. But yes, I get lucky. One thing about garnishes, I just kind of thought of, your potatoes, kind of chunky, no seasoning on those guys. I actually would season those up ahead of time to add into the dish. You got to season all levels of it, because if you're putting those just straight potatoes, unseasoned potatoes in, they're just pulling away from your soup. So I did it a little late, but I just worked a little seasoning onto those. I don't need any seasoning on my beautiful crab pieces. Now, as this is coming up to temperature, it may very well need a little more seasoning, and we're getting ready to do our finishes and set up for service. So when we're setting things up for service, oftentimes we don't add starchy ingredients to a soup, right? We'll kind of leave those things out because it's just going to fall apart. Also, something like these meat chunks, your protein chunks with chicken, whatever, in a soup, that stuff just shreds apart over time if you're just holding your soup hot, right? And so what we want to do is hold these prime ingredients out on the side and add them in at service. And that's what you're going to see me do. We will literally lay things into the bowls, into heated bowls, for proper soup service, maybe about 3 pieces of oyster, about 7 pieces of this crab. And so I want to lay some of that in, some potatoes down, about 3 or 4 of those. Who's counting, right? I better put a 5th one in there or somebody's going to say. All right. And then just a few of my little fronds, my little friends. I'll do some of those inside. And I'll do the similar situation on the other. I'm kind of watching my pot come up to a boil here, so I'm going to give it a little stir. Turning it on down to low. And let me go ahead and set up another bowl. I hope my wife likes chowder for dinner. Or bisque. I'm not sure whether to call it a bisque or a chowder at this point. A few little fronds down there. A bunch of crab. A bunch of oyster. It's beautiful. Very simple. I'm not making faces. I like things to kind of fall where they fall. I think that's probably enough. Now back to the soup. I brought it to the boil. It's at the boil along the side. The next thing I want to do is temper my yogurt into the soup, okay? Normally this would be cream. What I'm going to do is take a little hot soup. I'm going to warm my yogurt up a little bit, and then I'm going to pour it back into the soup. Once I get in there, I don't want any more fire. So that's why I brought it up to the boil. Now I'm going to turn off my flame. When you're doing finishes with dairy, you don't want any flame going on underneath, okay? I'm going to grab a ladle. And I'm just going to put a tiny bit of soup in here. To heat it up slowly. And I got to be careful. It's a small bowl. Normally I like a bigger bowl. And I've warmed up that yogurt, so its introduction into the soup isn't quite as jarring. And it has melted in there smoothly, and now I can add it into the soup. There's no more fire under the soup after this point, okay? You'll start getting little specks of, you know, coagulated yogurt protein if you turn the fire on after. Okay, so I just used yogurt instead of cream. Cuts my fat, gives me a protein element in the soup. I could eat it like this. I'm going to check my seasoning, of course. Let me get that worked in all the way. Okay, yogurt is in there. Let me check my seasoning before I serve. Yes, quite delicious. Okay, it's got a big crustacean flavor there. I got out of those shells. I didn't have a lot of shells, so I did use a little bit of the shredded crab to kind of bump that up. And so success, okay? It worked out nicely. Let me go ahead and pour it on in. You'll see the consistency and color of the finished soup. This color, we created that. It didn't come out of a can. It came out of a pan. Look at that color. It looks like bisque. This is a rice thickened bisque. And I'm going to be covering all of that stuff, but you'll be getting little bites of it as you eat, or at least I will. Here we go on the other. Oh yeah. There is the tiniest bit of afterburn. That's exactly what you want to kind of shoot for. Sometimes, again, I get lucky. And then we'll just garnish with additional crab. You want to show off the money, okay? So you've got crab underneath there, and now when I add another piece, hopefully it won't sink to the bottom. You'll still see it. And you want to show off the color if you can. Boom. A couple of little pieces. Boom. Piece of oyster maybe. Whoop. And then I'll drop a frond around on each bowl. Just natural single fronds. I have these big stubby fingers. Sorry I don't have any tweezers. Use my stubby fingers. And there it is. I mean, that's all. I mean, what else you got to say, right? So let's see, it looks like I got a little question here. What is the difference between bisque and chowder, the potatoes? So yeah, that's a good question, right? I didn't really cover the difference between bisque and chowder. Chowder typically is a thick, chunky seafood, right? Yeah, the potatoes and other things. Another thing that's very common, let me turn this way, that glare is horrible. Another thing common with chowders is you will typically see a recipe starting out with pork product. Okay, so you'll see like a bacon rendering in the beginning. Usually a chowder's got a little bacon worked into it too, but it doesn't have to. Again, just a thick seafood-based chowder typically, but you could have vegetable chowders. You can have a vegetable bisque. You can have a tomato bisque, right? That doesn't have any shellfish in it. You don't have to have shellfish in it. Yeah. So that is my bisque, ladies and gentlemen. We really, the part you really want to look at is what we did in the beginning when we before we added the rice, before we added the liquid. That was kind of the setup to where we would go if we were just going to make a broth, or where we're going if we're going to make a soup out of it or whatever. There was a crossroads there, right? The whole preparation started with a little bit of shells and butter, or a lot of shells and butter in the beginning. I had a little bit, but Debbie's got a lot of shells, right? Sweat those out, add aromatic ingredients and get a little spice in there if you want to. Aromatic ingredients would be things like onions, leeks, the white part of a leek. Parsnip works, right? I use some fennel in mine today. That's a classic one with seafood, right? And celery. That all of those work. Carrots as well. Carrots are great in this, right? Once you get that stuff sweated out with the aromatic herbs, right? Thyme, bay leaf, those classic French herbs. You add liquid. You add rice and you let it cook until the rice is soft, baby food soft, so you can puree it, and then adjust seasoning and finish with cream. Basically, that was it. Once you puree it, okay. And so that was the bisque. Okay, I talked about a lot of stuff. I know these are not really recipe classes, right? I'm really giving you kind of the discussion behind the recipe. Like, this is kind of how we put it together, and kind of how things fit together, right? You mentioned chowder. Chowder works more like a cream soup. If you know soup dynamics and you know how to make a cream soup, which we discussed earlier, you can make a chowder. Chowder is just like a cream soup, but it has half milk and half stock in it, right? So it's a little bit different. In culinary school, we teach the French sauces first. And if you understand sauce dynamics, you understand a lot of these soup dynamics. And this is kind of where it all falls together. I have been doing these for a full year now. I started with when coronavirus started, and I'm kind of feeling like I've gone through a lot of the basics, and I'm rolling out stuff that you would see kind of later on in a program. Maybe I might go ahead and just start all over at the beginning. Making stock, doing knife cuts again. I'm thinking about starting that up, but who knows? I'm kind of doing this, and I got a couple of people I want to talk to too. I'm still doing interviews. Hey, it's the industry cooking show, we just kind of do what we feel like at the time, right? Right now I'm just staring at these beautiful bisques here, and I'm ready to kind of eat. So I should probably bring it to a close. Okay, next week I'm going to go to another farmer's market and see what I feel like cooking after I visit. Okay, and I assure you it will be educational once we get there. Otherwise, have yourselves a good week and get out there and cook something, eat some food, try some stuff that you haven't tried before, and enjoy, right? Come back again in about a week, and we'll do this again. I'm glad you guys were able to join this week, and that's all I got. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, the party's always in the kitchen.